and I am the Director of Racial Justice Programs at the YWCA Evanston North Shore. And you might be thinking, so why are you here? And it's because, as Sherilyn Birdsong mentioned in her talk, for 10 years the foundation took care of the Race Against Hate, and then Sherilyn was going to return to Atlanta and realized it's really hard to do it from there to here. Looked around to see what agency in the Evanston-Skokie area would carry on with the same core beliefs about the power of a community to transform, and graciously said to the YWCA Evanston North Shore, will you carry on this Race Against Hate, which the YWCA has done. And 15 years later, the Race Against Hate continues to be a community response to a hate crime. In addition to Ricky being shot that night, the same gentleman, prior to getting to Skokie, had driven through West Rogers Park and shot at members of a synagogue as they were trying to go to Friday evening services. He was not successful in I don't recall, nobody was even, two were shot, but no one was killed at that point, and continued on and saw a black man walking down the street and shot him, and then the next day showed up in Indiana and shot a Korean graduate student at Indiana University, and then eventually took his own life. And so this is a person who was indiscriminate in their hatred. Just sort of general purposes, anyone who doesn't look like me. And we have that in so many degrees in our society. And part of what the YWCA, part of our core mission, our logo is YWCA, eliminating racism, empowering women. And eliminating racism intentionally first, because about 12 years ago, the national YWCA said, we have got to put this on the table. We have got to teach communities and individuals how to talk about this, because it gets in the way of any kinds of solutions. So you've heard some things this morning, and I just heard some more from Jennifer about collaboration, about education. So part of what the YWCA does is use that opportunity of getting, I think we had 5,200 people in June participating in that event, and then walking through the community with their Race Against Hate t-shirts on, and sort of sending that message that as a community, this is what we believe. It is important to figure out how do you educate, whether it's the block or a community or a neighborhood group, how do you educate them and then encourage them to educate? Because one of the first important responses to a hate crime is education. Sharing facts, because we know perceptions become facts for people, and be able to share true information and use the same tools that those who are perpetrating use. So use social media, use letters to the local newspaper, to the ward, the alderman's monthly column, to say, here's what really happened, or here are some facts that you need to know about what kinds of crimes have been happening in our community, whatever the issue is. Here are the facts about it. So the more people have facts, the better off you are in terms of trying to eliminate whatever the hate issue is. And then also part of our work is to provide opportunities to develop the skills to deal with the hateful speech or to understand the issues. And so education in terms of, we need to have skill practice, the kind of listening that it takes to develop those relationships. I mean, literally, as a society, we've sort of lost that thing of focused listening. So listening, also learning to accept that there are multiple perspectives that exist, and not trying to prove that my way is the right way and yours is the wrong, but to say, oh, you heard the same story I heard, and this is what I heard, and this is what you heard. Why do you suppose we heard that so differently? Because it isn't about that moment. It's about that place of hearing things differently because our experiences are different. And helping us to come to grips with that takes us about 5 steps along the process of being able to face whatever the issue is. And then to provide opportunities for dialogue. And you just listed a whole set, and I would call her in a heartbeat if I lived in the city and was dealing with city problems. But doing developing places where people can come and have dialogue about whatever is the issue that's stirring them up. Because the sooner we get conversation on the table, the sooner we can, or the more likely we are to avoid a very negative ending. So I can sure understand that poor man on the plane last night who just wishes that he had that moment back in time, because we all wish we could have done something before the thing happened. And that's part of why you're all here today. And then another thing, which I've heard a lot about today, and is something for the YWCA that has really helped us, and in particular, it's something that really makes the Race Against Hate a special day, and that is creating community partnerships. So encouraging groups that may or may not be your natural allies. We have all sorts of schools, businesses, civic organizations who come and put a table up on that day, and it's really, I would just say, if you have never participated in this, next Father's Day, start your day at the Race Against Hate, because it gives you an opportunity with your family or your friends to participate in something that says, we as a community are more powerful even than that level of hate. And that's the message that Sherilyn has spread nonstop. It's real. What you heard from her is really who she is and how she is. And having an opportunity for other groups to say, we're in this too, allows groups to say, oh, you do this too? Well, maybe we could collaborate with you on something in the future. So breaking down some of those, what we consider natural barriers, and saying, oh yeah, you're a school and we're a school, we're in competition for these students or this federal dollars, or to say, what if we did an intergroup training together and put our federal dollars together and had one really good training instead of two, this is all we can afford. And so you start to create possibilities for people to look at solutions that were not available to them alone. The other thing that happens with community partnerships is if you really develop a true one, then you're advertising each other's success or each other's issues. So for most of us who are not-for-profits, getting the word out is key. Well, I can get the word out to my mailing list, but if you and I are collaborating, now my word's going to get out to her list as well, and the same's going to happen for her programs. So we're going to support each other, even if I don't have anything to do with that program. She's our partner, so we're going to tell people about their good programs. Again, it allows you to broaden the set of people that know about your issue and are going to act on it. It also makes the community a little bit less vulnerable to attack, because if it's clear that we're willing to step over some of these pretend barriers that exist, people know that it's not just going to be me you're attacking, because if you attack me, she's going to come and stand with me, and this group's going to come and stand with me. And so creating those partnerships makes a big difference every step along the way. I also want to repeat that encouraging partnerships with the law enforcement agencies. Oftentimes people will say they're not willing to report something that happened because nothing was going to happen, or it would get them in trouble, etc. Again, we have to educate what does happen when you report a hate crime, and so having that information, but then also to know that, yeah, we've worked with the Evanston Police Department many times, and here's what they do with us. And letting people start to see that that partnership is not something that's just occasional, that it's regular. And it allows people to break down some of the mistrust. Now, I am not Pollyanna. I don't think people are going to say, oh, great, I love my local, whomever law enforcement. I'm sorry, law enforcement agencies, that that's the case, but it's not going to happen. But repeated opportunities for them to see the law enforcement agency working with whatever group it is that they're working with really does start to say, you know, they keep showing up. They're here. And so that trust factor starts to develop. I really believe that one of the things that works very well is to talk back to whatever media we can use, whether it's, you know, on Facebook or Twitter or in the local newspaper, but to tell the story, having stories told over and over and over again in their truth is an important thing. I don't suggest getting in debates on Facebook with people that you're never going to change their mind. What is the point? Somehow I always feel like I'm going to end up saying something that gives them a platform that I don't want to give them. What I want to do is to one time say my story. Whatever my organization or my issue, whatever it is that we're dealing with, say that story loud and clear. Don't argue about it. I can't change what anybody else says or does. I can only change what I'm doing. And if I'm telling my story consistently and people are seeing the same message over and over, they're going to start to realize that really is the way things are happening, or whatever is the truth I'm trying to tell. In Skokie, which is the community just west of Evanston, the community came together a few years ago. There was an attempt, again, all those years later, an attempt by the KKK. They had gotten a permit to have a rally and bring up the past and get people all exercised in negative ways. And the community, because there was a coalition of groups who said, we don't want them to get the publicity, we don't want to make the news with stuff going back and forth, and very quickly said, let's have something else going on at the same time that we want people to attend, and created a celebration of who we are, and at the same time, indoors at one of the high schools, away from where the KKK was planning to gather, that would draw people to say, this is the positive thing we can do today. Can't change them. Can't change what they're doing. This is what we can do to respond. And it was very effective. I got 1 minute. So we continue to also look for ways to have the topic of race, which is one of our biggest issues, on the table. And using partnership with the Illinois Holocaust Museum, the YWCA and the Holocaust Museum have just an exhibit just opened last Sunday called Race, Are We So Different? And it's a nationally traveling exhibit that you should all see because it's fabulous. And it won't be at any of the museums in Chicago because there's a 50-mile radius thing, and so it won't be anywhere but the Holocaust Museum. And it'll be there until January 25th. What it does for us is give us an opportunity to have our community partners also have programs. Theaters are doing things, and schools are doing things, and faith groups are doing things, and bringing groups of people there to then have facilitated conversations. I think what Jennifer described, all of those programs require people who are trained to do it. So think about, when you're thinking about the education piece for whatever issue you're addressing, make sure you have someone who's competent to be a facilitator and knows the issues, so that you're not bringing people into something that's not going to be worth it. You want to really make sure that you're bringing people to something that will allow them to have their issues addressed, ask some questions, and walk away with a sense of, now what's my role? What's my response to be to that? Ooh, I did it without another note.